Hello, this is Mandy and Courtney. We are here talking about the Upgrade Soul, story that was offered through
Opportune.
There you go.
It's a website that they have a few graphic stories, or what they're describing as games, comics, and music kind of blended into one. And this story, you can only read it or access it if you have an iPhone, iPad, or iPhone Touch. Also, you need a particular version of iOS for it to work correctly. You can access, it's an app, you access it through an app. The first chapter is free. You can get the second through sixth chapter as a bundle for $3.99. And then each chapter is 99 cents. Currently, the story is only at 9 chapters, but it will eventually be consist of 18 chapters.
So we only read the first chapter because we weren't going to pay for it. The first chapter, it starts off following what is an aunt and niece, I believe. Mm-hmm. And they're in the backyard, and they have like is it a mouse or is it a rabbit?
I think it's a mouse.
A mouse.
It's a large mouse.
And they have like this huge maze, and it's like a science experiment, and they're talking about that. And then this cat comes in and kind of disrupts the whole thing, and so they have to go back into the house, and the kid's really upset. And what I liked about it is the aunt says that you need to be prepared, like when there's a crisis or something, you need to stay calm and be prepared. And as a teacher, I felt that was applicable to teaching as well. Another thing about the story is if you have like on your iPad, it's actually kind of 3D, so if you move it around, you can see a little bit, but I wasn't that impressed by that.
Yeah, so. The 3D wasn't the best.
And the music was weird.
The music was very strange, so I'm trying to pull up the quote where they're kind of describing their point of incorporating the music, but it's not very word heavy. There's just small snippets of text that pop up, and I feel like the music and the images are really what's propelling the story forward. But the music was super weird. In fact, I turned it down when I was reading it because it was just making me feel really weird. But the premise of the story is also strange and disturbing, so this music definitely went well with it. But she referred to the aunt, which is Molly, her husband Hank. They're both scientists who decide to fund, this is how it's described on the website, a risky experimental therapy to rejuvenate the human body, with only one condition, that they be the first in line to receive it. When dangerous complications develop, a battle for psychological dominance begins. So we only read the first chapter, and the first chapter ends with Molly waking up in a body looking very alien and disfigured with these things like hooked up to the side of her head. And other, like, I assume scientists standing around her trying to, like, calm her down, like, okay, your body has went through, like, this rough transition, you're about to see your husband, what you may see may be shocking. And then before she sees him is when that first chapter ends.
Yeah, so, and I don't think, if you just went into it without reading about it on the site beforehand, it really doesn't explain that they are scientists and they have, like, this idea and they have to be the first test subjects. You kind of come away from that first chapter like, what just happened? So and who knows, maybe they would clear it up in the second chapter real quick after that. So
maybe that's why they have it like that, to motivate someone to buy it. In terms of in-class application, I think that this isn't something that I would teach because, one, I mean, you need a certain device and you have to pay for it, and that kind of complicates bringing that into the classroom a little bit. But also I'm at the high school level right now, and I feel like there's not enough text or words in the graphic novel to be like beneficial in terms of like vocab development and things like that. Students can make inferences based on the music and the images, which is cool. And Mandy and I discussed that for that reason it would be really good for ESL students who are still acquiring English.
Yeah, so like for instance, I know you guys just did a science fiction unit, or was that someone else?
I think that
might have been someone else. But like for a science fiction unit, or even just as a different narrative or something, it is very, from an English standpoint, it's helpful in that it does have visuals. It does have, I mean, even just the music, you can kind of tell if something good or bad's going to happen. And it's just so, I mean, it's all dialogue. You're not having to figure out like what someone actually means by something that's right there. I don't know if I would use this again, like the whole having to pay for it and then it only works on certain devices makes it very difficult. But as a Spanish teacher, I think it's a very creative thing to use. And if there were like Spanish, I mean, as it's kind of working back to ESL and bilingual learners, if there was a Spanish one available in that kind of form, it would be very helpful to have that for students so they can really, having those visual aids is very helpful. So,
and I think it would be a perfect model for reluctant readers and writers. Like, this is a different form of narrative. I'm actually going to be launching a narrative writing unit for my lead teaching requirement. And I have a lot of students in there who are artists or who are really into music, and so I think it would be cool as a model to show them, okay, you can write your narrative and you can add these other elements to your narrative to help drive this story forward, and that may just make the writing experience a little bit more fun instead of limiting the story to text on paper, showing students that they can use music to kind of further enrich their story, their writing.
Yeah, so on the story, I didn't really get to make it work, but being able to like use the music and actually kind of change the music as you go. On my iPad, I could kind of like, if I just was clicking around, it would make like little dings and stuff, but I struggled trying to figure out how that worked.
Yeah, so what Mandy's referring to is Opportune, the website that the story is published on. The developer of the website, not the writer of this particular story, talks about how when he founded Opportune, it was so that he can combine, or so that writers could combine elements of games, comics, and music into stories that you can play like instruments or sing like songs in a musical. That component I really didn't see too much when I was scrolling through each frame. The music would change as I scrolled through each frame, but I didn't feel like I was able to manipulate the song or really change the song significantly. It just seemed like the score went along with each frame of that graphic novel, if that makes sense. And it's interesting that he describes story, or he refers to musicals when he's talking about these graphic novels. And he says, what is not so much about loving the genre of the musical as it is loving the idea of the musical, the idea of telling stories with music and singing in the broadest sense. And then he describes an opportune musical, which he's referring to, or he's referencing these stories, calling these stories an opportune musical, where actions are the singing and the world is the song, though not necessarily your song. And then they talk about the interactive media and the immersive component, but I didn't really see that too much through the first chapter.
Yeah, not like compared to what we did this week with all the different, or I don't know if it was this week or last week, but you had the games that you could kind of choose and see what happens, and all of those, which are really cool. That was last week, and I didn't see like that in this at all. I didn't think it was nearly as interactive as
the website led on, because when I first read the description of the story, of the platform that the story is published through, I thought of that player's archetype, being able to really immerse yourself in the story and kind of be a participant in that way. And that really wasn't the case with this story. That being said, I did look at some of their other stories, if that's what you want to call them, and there's this story called Strange Rain, and on the screen it's kind of like this sky view, so it feels like you're looking up at the sky, and then raindrops appear to be like falling down onto your screen, and you can like touch the raindrops, and you can make more raindrops populate, and the music did kind of go along with that, but there really wasn't a story behind that. It was just kind of your own rainy day. It was kind of what I got from it. So that seemed a little bit more interactive. But.
Yeah, so I guess it's really what you make it. One question I had, and it's kind of for you, especially with English, because I see it can be used more in English. Do you think there is a way to incorporate more higher level thinking or a more developed story into it besides?
I think so. As I was saying, reading kind of has a different in this day and age kind of has a different definition, right? So kids are looking at images, and you can read a movie, and you can read people, and so you do have to make inferences, and you have to analyze images. So I think like students would have to do some analysis. Again, I only got to see the first chapter, but if you're really asking them to, I don't know, maybe write some sort of short response on how the, what meaning that they're making from the story or of the images, how those images are truly significant in propelling the story, and having students draw themes. And then also you can bring in tone, because as we both said, the music was really weird. It made me feel really weird. So I could see like teaching, that would be a good segue into tone, and teaching tone in literature through that music.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because music, even in movies, it's like such a powerful thing. You know what's going to happen, you know how you feel, like it makes you feel a certain way, and that's always been so tied to movies, and being able to tie it to a story, I think is really huge. So, yeah, that was my
tone and mood.
Big question. Okay, I guess like overall for me, I wouldn't see this as very helpful in my classes, because it sounds like, I mean, not like I built one or anything, but also sounds like it would be a lot to create, because you have to create those drawings and everything like that. I wouldn't use it in my class, because very rarely are we spending enough time on like creating a story. So, and it's not so much like what's your story about, but like can you get the grammar and like make it make sense. So I wouldn't use something like this in my class. Overall.
And as I said, it's not something that I would teach, but maybe I would just show like a little clip of it to model like how students can make their narrative more creative or unique. And that's about it.
I think it's like useful as a tool for an instructor to use, depending on what the story actually is and how it's presented. I definitely agree with that, but yeah, I don't see it as an actual like for students to create.
Yeah.
So. Okay, any other last minute thoughts about it?
Not really. I think that kind of sums up my general opinion of it, and yeah, not too much to say on this one.
Yeah. As a story in itself, in one chapter, I didn't care for it, so I don't recommend it to anyone.
Yeah, me either. I wasn't motivated to buy another chapter.
Yeah.
We'll
and
put it that way.
I don't know if, like, as far as a dialogue and discussion, it was like maybe one of the other stories would have been better to actually discuss, but I didn't think this one was like the best for that. So
yeah,
for all the future dialoguers. Okay.
Alrighty.
Well, that's it.
That's
okay,
all.
bye.
Bye, folks.